Welcome.
Hello. Oh,
It's okay. Hi, I'm Donna Freeman, the founder of Kids Yoga Academy and Yoga in My School. Welcome this evening to a special presentation. We are thrilled to have Carla Tantillo, the founder of Mindful Practices, based out of Chicago, here with us tonight. And she's going to be teaching us about hip-hop yoga. Now, I have watched her posts on Facebook and Twitter and all those kind of fun things talking about hip-hop yoga for over a year now. And every time she posts a picture, I'm like, that is so cool. Oh, I want to learn how to do that. And so I literally, sent her an email and said, Carla, please, oh, please, can you find time in your very busy life to share your expertise with the rest of us? And she's expecting and is due very soon, but she has put this presentation together for us this evening, and we are thrilled to have her here. So without further ado, we're going to turn the next hour over to her very capable hands, Carla.
oh, well, thank you so much, Donna. And I just have to say, what an honor it is to be collaborating with you. We're all familiar with the amazing platform that you created, and it's such a resource, and it's such a great resource for the community. So I am just honored to be a part of it. So thank you so much for having me tonight. So let's dive in, everyone. So here we are, hip-hop yoga, effective strategies to bring movement and social emotional learning into the classroom. So we're going to dive right in. Now you'll see the slide at the end with my contact information. Please know that throughout the presentation that my mantra is I'm here to support you with the work. So whether questions come up during the presentation or if you want to jot down my email, know that you can reach out to me after the presentation and I will be as a servant to you to make sure that you have the tools to get the work. So again, my organization, what we do, Mindful Practices, we're here in Chicago. We're about 25 people strong, and we work with on average 75 schools across the country per year. This is my publication. A couple of you have seen it. At the end, I'll give you a discount for it. I'm sharing some tools from the publication with you for free, so there's no need to buy it. But if you feel like you need additional resources, it's there for you. So today's agenda, we're going to reflect on our existing practices and our competency. What are the things that we're already doing as yoga educators? What are the pieces that we need to learn to be able to implement hip-hop yoga? And next, we're going to talk about strategies that we can share. And so how do we think about bringing this work to the communities that we're serving, whether that is a kids yoga class at a studio, whether that's in a school context, whether that's at a community center or YMCA, right? Thinking about the strategies, how we can share those strategies and create a safe space for learning. And then finally, setting goals to implement 3 new strategies that we've learned during our webinar experience today. So I'm very much into setting goals, and I'm very much into making sure that the tools that we have, right, are strategies that work for the demographic we're serving. So what this session is not. The session is not teaching you how to become a hip-hop dancer, and I'm sorry for those of you that might be disappointed in that. While I do believe that webinars are a very powerful tool, unfortunately that type of expertise, hip-hop yoga, is not something that I could teach over a webinar. But what this session is teaching you how to successfully structure a yoga, a dance, and an SEL workshop or class that you can provide. And so we're going to talk about whether or not it has to be hip-hop or whether or not dance would just work as well. And so we are going to give you guys different strategies and talk about like, oh yes, I could use yoga here, I could use dance here, and I could use social emotional learning here. We'll talk a little bit as well about what social emotional learning is. That's popularized more so recently in the past couple years in the world of education, and it depends kind of in what state you're in, if you're here in the United States, or what country you're in if you're abroad. So our guiding question: how can the inclusion of short dance moves, now let's say that your background is not in hip-hop. That's all right. Your background doesn't have to be in hip-hop. Let's say that you've got a background in modern dance or a background in jazz dance. How can you infuse dance into your yoga sequences? So those of us that are already super skilled at teaching vinyasa, right? How can we infuse yoga and dance together, with the end goal being improving students' social emotional learning skills? So do we want to create a performance piece? We might. We might want to create a performance piece, and we'll talk about that when we look at logistics toward the end. We're going to have a nice, deep, rich conversation about that. Is this going to be something that you're teaching in a class format where it's maybe 8 weeks or 12 weeks? Is this going to be something where you're teaching in a single workshop format? And then my argument would be that regardless of the format, that what you're doing is you're taking an individualized practice like yoga and you're fusing it with a community-based practice, a sangha, like dance, like movement, and therein lies the social emotional learning. So why do this at all, right? Like, what's the point? Like, why even do yoga with kids in the first place, right? And my argument, and this is again a piece from my book, is increasing, you'll see this kind of equation we have here, increasing student self-awareness, right? And so we all know that yoga helps us become aware of our body. What's happening in the body? And what are my triggers? And so, you know, those psychosomatic pieces, like I'm stressed, I get a headache, or my tummy hurts for some kids, right? And when I build that awareness, then I'm more able to self-regulate, because it's my opinion that students or adults, right, kids or adults, cannot regulate behaviors that they're not aware of. And so what we're doing is we're looking to cultivate self-awareness so we can improve self-regulation and then improve student behavior. Now, what does this have to do with hip-hop yoga? Because school and life is a social endeavor. And so what we want to do is we want to take the benefits of an individualized practice, right, involving the self, fuse them with a socialized practice like dance, like movement, like community, right, and get students involved so they're empowered. There's the growth piece there. Now, whether that involvement, again, is a performance piece or it's just community coming together for a one-day workshop, right, that's kind of your call, your teaching, what you have going on. But thinking about it beyond just the like, oh, they're creating a cool dance, but thinking about the benefits of the students being able to regulate the self so socially their behavior improves. So let's take a look here at the definition of social emotional learning. Now, this is a deep, deep definition. I'm going to use my cursor here, right, and we'll try the little pen highlighter here. So you're looking at, you know, developing the skills, right? So we're looking at social emotional learning being the process of developing the skills needed to recognize and manage emotions. And so you'll notice, right, is that we're saying that students may be experiencing anger and may be experiencing frustration, but don't necessarily have the words. They don't have the voice. They haven't found their voice around that. And so it's manifesting through negative behavior, like hitting, etc. And so what we want students to do is to be able to set and achieve positive goals, right? So far we've got the social emotional learning is defined as the process of developing the skills needed to recognize and manage emotion. So I'm feeling anger. When I feel anger, I want to hit someone, right? And so getting students to realize, like, oh, I'm hitting or I'm lashing out because I'm feeling anger. And so instead, right, of just being kind of victimized by my emotions, cultivating that self-awareness, being able to self-regulate, and then look here, we move into these more social aspects, achieving positive goals, appreciate the perspective of others, right? And then here, right here, this is where we bring in that establish and maintain positive relationships. So again, moving from the self to the social, using dance as a vehicle for that, right? Because I can't dance solo, dance by myself, dance in the rain, you know, that whole thing. But getting students to be able to take those individualized practices like yoga, meditation, etc., and then building on that, creating something that's social, community, sangha, coming together, and making responsible decisions, handling interpersonal situations more effectively, right, by using this hip-hop yoga vehicle. And so that's kind of our end game. Now, do I think that there's merit in students performing? Do I think that there's merit in students creating something together? Absolutely. But again, as mindful practices, our approach is hip-hop yoga because it's a vehicle for social emotional learning to take place because it fuses the self and the social. Now, this definition here is from Castle. This is kind of the standard definition of social emotional learning out there. If you'd like to know more, of course, email me or check out Castle's website. So let's take a pause here. And so what's going to happen is I'm throwing this question out to the group, and then I'm going to ask Donna to help me out. She has access to your responses, and she's going to kind of tell me like where we are. So how can you structure your classroom to reflect SEL? So we're not talking yet hip-hop yoga. We're just talking about the work that you're doing now. Now that we know our definition of social emotional learning, right? How can you structure your classroom? Now I'm using classroom loosely here. Maybe this is, again, a class you're teaching at a local yoga studio. Maybe this is at a school setting. Maybe this is something you want to do with adults. Are you already using the tenets of social emotional learning that we talked about? Here we go, managing emotions, achieving positive goals, perspectives of others, etc. Are you already including that in the work that you're doing? So pausing for a moment now, and then I'm going to ask Donna to put up any responses. I really encourage you guys to share. So Donna, take it away if any responses are coming in.
Couple are. So we have got they're using a partner work.
Awesome.
Partner poses has come up a couple of times. Also, is how they're setting up the classroom, often in a circle.
Nice.
Okay, so that that cohesiveness is there. We also have the taking turns aspect. So when, right, if you're sharing, somebody's right here, and a talking stick or a talking item.
Great.
So those are a few things that have come in.
Great. Now, if we can, let's even get more specific, and let's talk specifically about this, like these interpersonal situations and responsible decision making. And so when classroom management situations occur, when there's discipline problems, let's say, how are you using social emotional learning to influence that trajectory, like to positively discipline your students? I can see talking stick as being a great proactive way to keep students from talking over one another, talking over the teacher, or is anyone else using anything that we would kind of classify as a classroom management strategy?
Right. Well, I know that I use a lot of things that are proactive, as people think. I use tons of proactive because I'd rather prevent issues than have to deal with them. And so I use a lot of, using children's names, making sure that they know what the expectations are, being very energetic and creative with my approach. So sometimes I bring in weird and odd things into class, and so they're like, what the heck is she doing today? That weird yoga teacher, oh my goodness, right? And that's a great classroom management technique just to get their curiosity so they're more interested in me than in poking their neighbor, right?
I love it. Absolutely, Donna. I love it. I love it. So we'll keep moving forward, but please, everyone, make sure that you send responses and inquiries and thoughts to Donna, and she'll share out with the group. So moving forward, this first strategy, past the cool clap, is one it's a theater strategy adopted from Viola Spolin's work. And again, Donna has put a handout together, and so you have access to this page. And I love using this strategy with students. And those of you that are already using a circle, and I loved hearing that, what's great about this is it gets students into their body, and it gets them working collaboratively. Now, it is vital, and I can't emphasize this enough, when you're thinking about the fusion of dance and yoga, you're thinking about building community within your yoga class, it's vital to include these opening games, these opening activities, versus just throwing students into their bodies and say, okay, now show me a dance move. I might be super capable and competent in yoga and super comfortable in yoga, but now you're having me show off a dance move, and that's going to shift. And so what you want to do is you want to make sure you honor students' comfort zones and create a safe space for them to take risks. And so this activity is a lovely way to do that, and it's quite simple. You'll notice that we have steps 1, 2, and 3. You arrange your students in a large circle. They're about arms width apart. And then you choose a student to begin, or you begin yourself. You turn to the student on your left, you make eye contact, and you pass a clap. And so it's just hands together clapping, right? And then that student who receives the clap from you turns, and they clap, and they clap, and they clap. And it goes all the way around the circle. Another thing that is really nice about this activity is it fosters eye contact. Now, with the practice of yoga, because it's individualized a lot of the time, right, eye contact isn't encouraged or even spoken about and not appropriate, right? And so what this is doing is this is encouraging students to begin to connect on that interpersonal level. They're making eye contact and they're working collaboratively. These are all essential parts to any type of dance, right? Think of the last dance performance you went to. If the dancers on stage weren't working collaboratively, the performance would be like, what's happening? They're all just a bunch of people up there doing their own thing. And so again, that fusion of the self and the social, and including games, that can do that. Now you'll notice here there's a couple variations that we've talked about. You can reverse the clap. You can bring in dance and alternate movements in here. We've also had, like if you look at game variation 2, stomp, stomp, clap. So you're getting the students to have rhythm. You can include music here in the background to encourage the students to begin to find rhythm. We can't assume that all of our students have rhythm. We can't assume all our students can follow a beat, right? And so this is a great way to bring in those dance pieces. And again, it doesn't have to be hip-hop. It could be jazz. It could be modern. It could be square dancing. But at the same time, you're getting students comfortable with the tenets of dance and the pieces of dance before you're throwing them into an all-out, like creating a performance piece. So next is, again, getting the students, building those interpersonal skills, and getting the students to turn on that creative brain. What is it that they want out of this? If they're now all these strategies work in a workshop experience. If you've got like a 2 or 3 hour workshop you're teaching, and it also works in something where you're teaching a class setting, right? So this is a strategy that I have borrowed from Kripalu. I've been a presenter at Kripalu now, the Yoga in Schools Symposium, for a couple of years. And so we've got a co-listening activity here, right? This is an example of 2 of our students. They're sitting, they're talking, they're sharing out their ideas prior to creating a dance. Like, well, I want to have something that's really expressive in this way. And so I'm talking for 1.5 minutes, and my partner's just listening to me, right? The partner is not chiming in. That partner is not interrupting me. The partner is just hearing me. And I can be going all over the map. Well, and I want there to be costumes, and I want there to be this, and I want there to be that. But I'm just chatting and sharing. And at the end of the 1.5 minutes, the timekeeper, which is you, stops and says, all right, now partners switch. And then the next partner shares. Now, what's great about this is that it prevents it from being one voice that leads the flock with the creation of a dance, right? Instead, you've got people listening and sharing together, and then they can turn, both face the inside of the circle, and they can say, well, my partner was saying that they'd like the dance to look like this, and my partner was saying they'd like to use this type of music. Now, for those of us that are working in communities of color, for those of us that are working in communities with diverse learners and diverse needs, this is a great way to infuse culture and cultural competency into the work, right? And so you may or may not be familiar with hip-hop, but you may be familiar with cumbia or merengue, and maybe your students are familiar with cumbia and merengue and you have no clue. So this is a great way to make sure that what dance piece you're creating is reflective of the community that you're serving, right? And so your students, they can chat, they can think it out, you can chat and think it out. So one more time, you have the students standing shoulder to shoulder. One is facing one way, one is facing the other. I always cue them by hair length. So short hair partner, you're going to go first. They talk for 1.5 minutes. They share out. The other partner just listens, and then you switch. This is a great way to turn on the creative brain. It's also a great way to get them to brainstorm what they want this dance yoga fusion that they're creating to look like. Now you'll notice this is a very student-centered approach. So Hip Hop Yoga is our trademarked program. And the way that we teach it, right, the way that my team teaches it is it's very student-centered and very student-led. And so if you're teaching a hip-hop yoga program, you're working for me, and you are really focused on the student experience, and I can't emphasize that enough. So it's not like going in with a set amount of routines that look and feel a certain way to this type of music. It's really organically grown by the student's individual experience, and I think that's super important. So next, getting students into their bodies and you getting a sense of how much dance these kids actually know. Right now, again, I'm saying kids, but we might be working with adults. Partner mirroring is a great way to do that. So you have the two students or two adults standing facing one another. So I'm standing facing my partner. And again, you cue them long hair or short hair. Say, all right, the long hair person's going to go first. And you have some music playing in the background. And that long hair partner is going to start maybe with a dance move. They're going to start moving their arms. They're going to start moving their legs. And then the other partner in front of them just mirrors. The other partner in front of them just mirrors what they're doing. So if I move my right arm nice and big in a fun like motion, then the partner in front of me does the exact same thing. And then you switch. And then you switch. And so your job as the facilitator is to cue them and kind of see where they are. So for instance, I'll play music and then I'll say, all right, long hair partner, start us off. Give me some dance moves. Now again, they're in pairs or small groups. And so what's nice is you can kind of see, okay, these kids are super comfortable. These kids here are super comfortable. This one not feeling the dance moves much. Then you can say, okay, partner, show me, okay, switch, show me a yoga pose. And so they're constantly switching. You're constantly seeing where they are skill set wise. And that's a great way for you to check in with the group and see like, oh, these students are really comfortable in dance. These students are really comfortable with yoga. These students are the ones that are kind of in between. These students are comfortable kind of leading the group of two, and these students are more comfortable like being in the background, being on the sidelines a little bit. And again, because you want to create an experience that's inclusive for all, a partner mirroring strategy is a great way to do that. And so right now I'm going to pause us. We've walked through 3 strategies. And I'm going to just ask if there's any questions. So the first strategy is pass the cool clap. Again, building eye contact, building community with the group. The second strategy is co-listening, having students plug into their creativity, have students listen to one another, and also thinking about building that culturally relevant piece. And the third strategy is partner mirroring, which gives you a sense as the facilitator where your students are, where they're comfortable with dance, where they're comfortable with yoga, and gives you a sense, again, you're facilitating off to the side, and so you're the one who's playing music that they're moving to. You're the one who's saying, okay, and switch, so the next partner mirrors. Okay, and switch, and let's see some yoga poses, or make it super fast, make it super slow, and you can kind of gauge where the students are in their bodies. For those of us that are working with middle school populations, students that are, anywhere, if you're abroad, anywhere from like 12 to, 15 or 16 years of age, even if you're getting into secondary. This is especially important because we don't know where students are in their bodies. We really want to honor that. So I'm going to ask you now just to send Donna any questions you have. Where are you? Are these strategies resonating, or do we need to back it up a smidge or slow down before we keep moving forward? So Donna, let's see if there's any questions that come your way.
So far there's nothing, so I'm thinking everybody's kind of got a good handle on these things.
Awesome.
I really like the partner mirroring. I'm definitely going to be using that in the future with my students, especially like you say, the middle school kids, because they so love to be interactive.
They do, and it's also a great strategy to test out different types of music. Mm-hmm. And so if you found some hip-hop music that you love, playing that, seeing how the students express to it, and also encouraging students to bring in their own music. Now, of course, that's stuff that you have to check ahead of time, stuff that you want to make sure is swear word free, yeah. Right?
Oh, yeah.
But it's a great way to kind of see, like, oh, these students, this type of music, this tempo, this pacing, this really resonates with the group. I can tell because when we're doing the partner mirroring activity, right, I can see that they're really in their bodies.
Mm-hmm. All right, sounds good. Now, just so you know, we can see like a little chat window with Robert Francis in the right-hand corner. Oh. So you just might want to close that up.
Oopsies. No. Let me see here. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. Anyway, I just want to let you know that we could see that. It's not a big deal.
There. Let's see if I can. I would like to know if I could click on it, but then my I might be moving. Oh, there we go. All right, there we go. Oopsies.
There, it went away.
There it went. All right.
Nope, don't close that one. Yeah, just minimize it.
Yeah.
No, close the webinar.
Right, I know. Now, there we go, everyone. We're back.
There.
We're
Woo.
back.
All right.
Yeah,
Looks
sorry,
good.
that is, that's my husband. So, yeah. You know how it is.
Yeah,
All
I
right,
do.
so moving forward, again, these are the experiences that we have, these are the strategies we've gone through so far. What I'd like you to do now, if you're with us and you have like a piece of scratch paper close to you, or if you're with a thought partner, you know, I know sometimes with webinars, you may be tuning in with someone else, or this might be, you know, stuff that you're going to share with your team. What activities would you feel most comfortable leading of the three? So there's kind of this part of when you share activities, you want to make sure that the activities that you implement, that the you know, participants are implementing, that they feel comfortable leading. So if you're like, yeah, you know what, that partner mirroring, I don't know, I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. I would feel comfortable with the pass the clap, though. I would feel comfortable teaching co-listening. I think that's a really important piece. And secondly, once you've kind of, you know, you've vetted the activities or the strategies based upon what you're comfortable leading, then the next piece is which would honor the needs of the community that you're serving. Now, I pause to bring this up because eye contact can be very loaded depending on the community that we work with, right? Eye contact, maybe to me or to Donna, is something that is friendly, something that shows that I'm actively listening. But eye contact in a community where there may be a lot of gang violence can be something that's very loaded. And so what we have to do is we have to make sure, again, that we're bringing that cultural competency to the work and that we're honoring the needs of the community that we're serving. And so we might not throw them into eye contact right away, right? And so the co-listening activity is a great way to build communication without loaded eye contact. And then partner mirroring can be a fun way to build an activity without eye contact being like the focus. Where past the clap, eye contact is really present and kind of a necessity. And so again, thinking about the needs of your community, right? Thinking about your comfort level. And with all the strategies we review in our webinar today, I encourage you to cherry pick only those strategies that meet both of those factors, right? What you're comfortable leading and what honors the needs of the community you're serving. So next, classroom climate and culture. And it's important to pause to think of this because when we're asking students to be creative, we have to make sure that the classroom climate and culture we're building for our hip-hop yoga class is inclusive. There's going to be some students that are absolutely going to shine, but you don't want to rely on those students too much in the instruction and have the other students feel like, well, gee, I'm not a very good dancer, so I'm not going to really be part of this class because Jamal's really running the show, right? Or Carlos is really running the show. And so you have to make sure that the modifications you're making to the curriculum are inclusive of all of the needs of your learners. We want this piece, this hip-hop yoga piece, to be physically and emotionally safe for our students. So this is tricky. Your students physically are going to want to do handstands and backflips and all kind of great stuff that we may or may not have been able to do when we were 12, right? And they're going to want to go after it, and they're going to be enthusiastic. And so you have to set some boundaries and parameters around that, because even though that might be a move or a pose or something that they can do, is it appropriate for your classroom? So you have to talk about the physical safety. Also because they're working in partners, they're working in pairs, they're working in a larger group, right? What kind of touching is allowed? So we have to think about safe touch, right? Are you talking about safe touch with your students? Now, dance has a lot of touch, and we want to make sure that the touch that we use in the creation of our hip-hop yoga class or our dance infusion class, right, is desexualized touch. I'm a fan of students using touch. I'm a fan of teachers using touch, but I also think that it necessitates a conversation, sometimes a difficult conversation, about what touch looks like. Now, my kind of go-to is saying, you know, safe touches, shoulders to head, shoulders to hands, and knees to feet, right? And giving students a zone and walking them through that, touching shoulders, touching your head, etc. And then looking at how students are using the physical body. And so there's a lot of dance out there, especially, in hip hop or more like, current dances where poses and moves are very sexualized. You've got like booty shaking and all types of fun stuff, which is great but not necessarily appropriate for school if you're teaching in a school setting, or not appropriate for your class. And so how can you set expectations for students and have a conversation around desexualized touch and desexualized movement? And that's really something that can be difficult and can be touchy and can be awkward, but it's your responsibility with the work, right? It's your responsibility to do it at the onset. And again, one of the reasons is you want this experience to be emotionally safe for everyone that's in the room. And while kids are joking around and they're having fun, at the same time, we can't use that kind of outward appearance as the barometer. We have to set the tone and say, this is what's appropriate for this setting, this is what's not appropriate for this setting. Also, we want to make sure, again, to get back to that inclusivity piece. Do you have learners with special needs that are in your room? And how can you make sure that everyone plays a part, whether it's, my job to help choose the music, or whether it's my job to do this with the activity? Like, how can we make sure that learners, regardless of their disability, are included, and how can you make sure that physical and emotional safety are met? And so pausing for a second real quick, and again, I'm going to cue you just to type in some stuff to Donna, like what are pieces here that you're like, I hadn't thought about this before, or I have this concern, because these are two, when I teach this workshop, these are two hot button pieces that come up quite a bit. So I want to make sure to address them head on, because the climate and culture of your hip hop yoga class is dependent upon you really addressing these issues. So again, I'm going to ask that you pause for a second and take a moment, type some questions to Donna, ask her, hey, this is my concern or that is my concern, before we move forward. So Donna, anything coming in or any thoughts on that?
Well, we'll just wait, give people a couple of minutes. I think this is really, pun intended, a touchy subject, especially
It
with
is, right?
what
I
the
know.
kids see in the videos, right? That they want to be
Yes.
twerking, that they want to be doing all this kind of stuff. And it's like, no, hang on. But just as you've done it here, being upfront with them, setting the parameters, this is what acceptable, this is what is not, and just, laying it out there, then everyone knows it's very out in the open, and you'll have, what I find is have kids start to self-monitor and monitor with their peers. And so it kind of takes it away from me. We set the parameters. This is what we're looking for. There's lots that your body can do without making it sexual. And
Exactly. And again, I know this is a lot of information for an hour, so I encourage you all to please reach out to me if there's questions on this after today, because that's all right? It's one of those things where you might start to implement and you might say to yourself, oh my gosh, you know what, I didn't even think about it, but now that I'm doing it, I'm like, holy cow, I really need a little advice on this safe sexual touch thing. And so please feel free to reach out as we go. All right, so moving forward now, again, pausing, reflecting, thinking about your experience as we move into building students' comfort with yoga sequences. So I've given you a sample yoga sequence here. Some of you might already be teaching vinyasa with your students, and so this is great. This is a no-brainer, right? You're like, okay, I've got this. We're already structuring vinyasa sequences. If you haven't started vinyasa sequences yet, then I would encourage you to use this simple template from my book. Now, if you're working with early childhood learners, I would encourage sequence 1 or 2, right? Especially sequence 1 where we have poses. Tree pose is the only pose with a side, right? We know that when we're teaching yoga and we're teaching sequences, poses with sides, like right side, left side, can be challenging. Now, how we structure our hip-hop yoga is that we infuse the dance into the yoga. And so it's really critical that your students understand sequencing on some basic level if we want them to take ownership of how this hip-hop yoga sequence is going to be created. So again, this is a sample. It's here in your packets. I'm guessing that many of our listeners and viewers today are already working with sequences with students, but if you're not, this is a great place to get started. Now, Adding music. All right, so what do we do with the music and how do we get students used to music? So this looks different for every instructor, to really depending on their comfort level. But what I would suggest that you do is you have your yoga sequence. You've taught your yoga sequence in isolation with no music on. Then you include music. And you have students count to the beat of the music. So you're getting them comfortable associating yoga and music. You're getting them comfortable with counting. You're getting them comfortable feeling the beat, right? And one of the reasons this is so important is because you're going to insert dance moves right into your yoga sequence. So it can be mountain pose, 4, 5, 6, starfish, 4, 5, 6, and then something like, oh, I'm infusing a dance move here, 4, 5, 6. Then I'm back to mountain. And so what's nice about this is that, again, this is happening organically. It's a student-led and student-generated piece. And so our end game is not, as I mentioned, to get these students to be, on what I'm trying to think of the dance show, like So You Think You Can Dance or whatever that is. That's not the end game. The end game is to get the students comfortable in their bodies, to get those interpersonal relationships going, and that's a great way to get them started is by having them bring in music or having them count to the music and getting them started that way. So again, you'll see some hip-hop yoga students here, right? These students were working collaboratively. These students here to the left, these gentlemen, they're working collaboratively, and they just started being like, okay, so we're going to do warrior one with hands up, and we're going to do this. And then this other group of students here, music was on, and they were just freezing in yoga poses as the music was playing. And that gave our instructors a sense of like, okay, this group ready to collaborate, this group, this is what they're sensing with the music. And then the music stopped, and we talked about what it was like to infuse music and yoga together. That's that critical step. So again, we have it, you don't throw them into a hip-hop yoga routine, you don't throw them into dance and yoga. You get them comfortable, starting with poses, then a vinyasa sequence, then adding music and counting, and then we move from there. So, strategy 6, getting students to experiment with creating yoga poses and dance moves. Now, again, you're going to, as Donna was kind of mentioning, current dance, you're going to have students parroting or mirroring a lot of the dance moves that they see in videos, they see that are popular out in the world, and that's great. You may or may not have a dance background. Now, if you don't have a dance background, but you love the idea of doing this, then you're kind of like, well, I can't shoot because I'm not a dancer. But actually, that's not true. You can, right? You've taught your students the vinyasa sequence. You've gotten them familiar with yoga, and you've gotten them familiar with music now and counting the beats to the music. And so don't feel like their yoga dance experience, their hip-hop yoga experience is wholly dependent upon your skill set as a dancer. It is not, right? What you can do instead is have the students create yoga pose and dance moves. And I would start small, right? I give you all a template here. Creating your own yoga pose. I would start small and have them use this template for the pose. Then I would have them use this template for a dance move. So the exact same thing, but creating your own dance move, right? What does that dance move look like? What are the steps to get into that dance move? And so you'll have your students chart their yoga and dance, just like, and I'm going to go back to the slide, just like they would a vinyasa sequence. And so if we're looking at number 1 and it's mountain pose starfish, before they'd hop back into mountain, maybe you insert the dance pose they've created, right? So the students know the sequence, and now you're saying, okay, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, what I'd like you to do is every time you see the mountain pose, I'd like you to insert your dance move right after it. And let's see, our music, let's see, we'll do it for 5 counts or 5 beats, right? And so you have the students practicing the yoga poses to the counts of the music. You have them inserting the dance move that they've created. And what's nice about this is it takes the pressure off you to be the dance rock star of the class. And instead, you're really fostering that student ownership. So you're fostering it because the students have brought in music from their community that resonates. You fostered it by having them create their own yoga moves here, create their own dance moves here, and then they're inserting it into a vinyasa sequence that's familiar. And so they're working in small groups potentially, they're working in pairs, and the students know where they're headed because you had them shoulder share in the beginning, and they have an idea of like, I want this to be like a yoga kumbaya thing, or I want this to be like Kanye's last video. Whatever that might be, right? The students know where they're headed, and so these activities are framed around that final end goal. And so you've got them creating their own, and then you have them take these moves and create yoga sculptures. Now, I'm a big fan of inserting a yoga sculpture here because it goes from the students working in pairs or small groups where they're working on their vinyasa sequence with yoga poses added to working on something where then they're coming up with like a whole team picture, right? So I'll give you an example. This yoga sculpture activity, and again, this is in your handout. What happens is you have the students break down poses into low, medium, and tall, right? They break their yoga poses into that, and then they also bring their dance moves into that. So those of us that are familiar with hip-hop dance, we know that Kundanyasana, right, that we know and love, that arm balance, is really a hip-hop dance move, right? And so what we do is the students will make these connections. They'll say, oh my gosh, this looks like that, or that looks like this. And so what you're doing is you're having the students create a yoga dance sculpture, and they're doing it as a team. So you'll have a couple students start, right? One student walks in, they freeze in a pose or a dance move, then another student using safe touch connects to them and freezes, connects to them and freezes, and then again you've got your music playing. The students are moving to the beat of the music, and so you go from the simple insertion of dance into vinyasa sequence to now having the students think creatively of like, oh, this move or this yoga pose fits with this yoga sculpture in this way. So for instance, I'll cue my hip-hop students to start off, like if somebody does a tall pose or a tall dance move, then you need to come in with a medium pose or a medium dance move. And so you're having the students not just use the poses they created, but think outside of the box about dance moves or yoga poses that they've seen. And so they're all of a sudden building this repertoire of dance and yoga poses. And so then when you bring this whole class together, they've got all these tools in their toolbox to create. So again, we're going to pause. We're going to take a moment, and we're going to review these strategies. So again, we had our initial 3. Now we're going to move us on back here, thinking about building yoga sequences, getting students comfortable with sequencing when they may not just been in a class where potentially you've been meeting them the whole time. Next, adding music and getting used to music and yoga being together, right? How are they counting cards? How are they counting, beats, right? And then how is that expressing itself in their yoga practice? Next, getting students to experiment with creating, getting them comfortable, like, I can do this, I can create a yoga pose, I can do this, I can create a dance move. And then next, getting them into teams. And so when you think of the last time, again, you went to a dance performance and you looked up on stage, that aesthetic that is created by having everyone on stage working to create this vision, this visual, and that's what you want your students to work toward as well. So I'm going to pause now, see if there's any questions before we dive into kind of the nitty-gritty logistical piece. So Donna, let me know if anyone's popping over with questions.
There was a question.
Again, I know this is a lot of info for an hour.
There,
oh, yes.
There was a question earlier. It came in just as you were moving on, so I didn't want to interrupt. But it was, at what age do you have the conversation about safe touch and creating those boundaries?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. I would say at any age. And I do mean that. Like I would say our programs typically start with 3-year-olds. And that conversation needs to happen at that early age. That conversation looks a lot different than if it's happening with a middle schooler, right? But really getting your 3-year-olds to say, like, okay, so what are the parts of the body that I can touch? Like, what are the parts of the body that someone can touch? Like, what feels good and what doesn't feel good, right? And so you're like, okay, my arms or my legs, and you keep it away from the torso, and you keep it away from the head as well, because our early childhood students, as many of us know, have a tendency to put weight on their heads or to, like, kind of plow forward with heads, you know, if we're working in groups, we're doing floor work. And so getting them to really think of arms and legs being where safe touch happens.
All right, fabulous. I think everybody's pretty good with the series that we've just done because no questions have come in on that one, so let's move on.
Awesome, awesome. Great news, great news. So here we go, creating your hip-hop yoga sequence. And so, again, I'm saying hip-hop, but please feel free, those of us with diverse dance backgrounds or working with different, different cultures, making sure that you think outside the box here. And so this is the easiest template to move forward, right? So think you've done all this leg work here at the onset. Now, how are you going to create a sequence? Now, this is actually our class outline. So when my instructors are teaching the class, right, they play the games that we've talked about. They've done that leg work. They've built, for those of us that are familiar with the term scaffolding, they scaffold it. And then they have a dance that they have the students create. So here we're calling it a sequence. You can call it a dance. It can turn into a final performance piece. So you're going to have your music playing. And then the first 10, 15 counts, depending on the type of music, is your warm-up. Now, sometimes that can be a warm-up dance. Sometimes that can be a warm-up yoga sequence. That really depends, right? And so you have the students moving to this warm-up. They're warming up the bodies. Then you have them transition for 5 to 7 counts in specific movements. So for instance, let's remember that yoga sequence. So you've got like movement, pose, movement, pose, movement, pose, repeating that twice. So maybe they're doing like dance move into tree pose, stepping back, dance move into tree pose, right? And you're having them repeat that twice. Then you move to 10 to 15 counts in a dance break. Now, the dance break can easily be the yoga sculpture. So you can have something really formalized like the yoga sculpture, or you can have a dance break where the students are free dancing. That dance break can look like whatever you want it to look like. So you have something that's structured, and then you move to something that's playful where they're working together collaboratively, and then you go back to structured, right? So 5 to 7 counts in your movement, then pose, and then repeat. Right? Now what's neat and what I always cue participants in my sessions to do is after our session now, go hop on YouTube or hop on MTV or whatever it is that we all watch and look at, turn on a music video or turn on, a dance sequence and notice kind of like where there's individualized dance happening, where there's collaborative dance happening, and think about, oh yeah, I could frame it like this, or I could do it like this, or this part of the music where it really crescendos would be a great time for free dance, right? Then we transition here to 10 to 15 counts in a dance break per student-led group. Now again, I've been emphasizing this about hip-hop yoga being a student-led activity. And so you've got this whole group. The whole group's doing the warm-up. The whole group's doing the 5 to 7 counts. Then you've got your 10 to 15 counts in the dance break. Then you go back to the 5 to 7 counts. Then, right, you've got your students maybe in small groups coming to the center. So maybe you've got like 3 to 5 kids that have created their own little routine using yoga poses they created, right? Using dance moves they created. And you have them do their own little routine in the center, and then they step back, and then 3 to 4 more kids come in. And so it switches from being this whole group instructional piece or this whole group performance piece to highlighting individual groups. Now what's great about that is, and let's think about our definition of social emotional learning, right? What's great about that is that then you're highlighting the work of small groups and the work it took to get them there, the interpersonal skills, the consensus building, all of that it took them to create that little, 30-second dance sequence that little small group created in the center. And then you bring them all back together for their closing sequence when you've got the whole class again focused, ready to go, and they close out the routine. So taking a look at this now, again, if you hop off the webinar and you go to create your own lesson plan, please email me questions. Questions now can come through lovely Donna. But thinking about like how you can structure your experience for your students, your hip hop yoga experience, using your skill set, your comfort level, using your student skills, comfortable, using music that it's reflective of the community, all that good stuff. So let's chat logistics. This is often the piece. So we go back and we look at that and we're like, oh my gosh, like how can I do all of this, or how can I do all those 7 strategies, in 3 hours? Well, you can't. You can't really in 3 hours. So, excuse me, so what you're creating, you them through, and it's an abbreviated version of this. So if you're teaching this as a 3-hour workshop, are you teaching this as a class of 8 to 12 weeks? And so what I encourage you to do now is answer these questions together, right? How long will your class workshop? And that is going to be a determining factor, right? And how it's going to go. If it's a one shell, then there's no chance music. There's no chance for you to maybe do this activity and that activity and have them create. So you really got to cherry pick again the activities you're comfortable with. Now, if it's a class that's running for X amount of weeks, have a final culminating performance piece. My suggestion is always yes for all of those social emotional learning skills that we've talked about, but like again, what works with your space, what works with your community, what works with the demographic? Is there space in the board where you're working to have a final performance piece? Is there a time that you can schedule it where mom, dad, and grandma and community members can come to support the work, right? Now, again, looking at these two pieces, outcomes and impact. Those of us that are working in school districts, I'm sure we have heard these two terms quite a bit, right? But how does the work that we're doing fit in to the school setting? It can't just be floating kind of, in the ether of what's happening in the school setting, but how do the outcomes of your hip-hop yoga program fit that work? And so thinking right now, those of us that are in school settings, and pausing for a second, how does it work? Like, is your school district totally plugged into hip-hop yoga, or sorry, totally plugged into social emotional learning? And if that's the case, right, what are the outcomes that your hip-hop yoga programming provides, your dance and yoga programming provides? And what's the impact? What is the impact of the work that you're doing? Is the impact that your students' social emotional learning skills and their creativity skills and their interpersonal skills will increase as a result of what you're delivering? And this is important, right? Because again, programming has to be tied to not only the climate and culture of the school, but what that school is looking to reinforce with their students day to day. You want your program to connect. You don't want your program to be something, again, that's just floating in the ether without any tie to the work the students are doing day in, day out. This next one I think is super important. What is the music, the dance that you're using, and how is it culturally relevant and responsive? And so are you choosing this dance, or are you choosing this music because you like it, right? Like you love Kanye. Everybody loves Kanye. But then you're working with the Latino Chicano community, and Kanye might not be the thing, right? But Luis Miguel is definitely the thing. And so what I always encourage my instructors to do is to make sure that what you're choosing is culturally responsive, respecting the community that you're working with, doing your homework on that community, and making sure that the music you choose and the dance moves you choose are reflective of the community. Again, continuing to infuse social emotional learning. So it's not just in these activities that we do at the onset. It's not like, oh, hey, we did our social emotional learning for 10 minutes, now we're done. Absolutely not. This whole hip-hop yoga experience, this whole dance experience is a social emotional learning activity, and honoring that, right? Again, how do you place students into groups for the work? Thinking about inclusion, thinking about your students with special needs or exceptional needs, thinking about your population, right? How can you make sure that this experience is physically and emotionally safe for your students? And this planning definitely comes, that this planning comes on you. It's on your shoulders. It's not enough that everyone had fun. If your end game is that students have fun, then don't do this work. right? Because there's a serious responsibility that comes with this work. And it can't be just fun, and it can't be just dance, and it can't be just yoga. Our responsibility as educators is to make sure that this experience that we create is safe, emotionally and physically for our students, and has impact, positive impact on our students. And last but not least, how do we include families and communities into this model, right? And so does your final performance piece, is it something that happens in front of students' parents, in front of their community? Is it something that happens where we're inviting, that maybe the students come down off stage and they teach the parents the routine that they've created, or they teach the parents an individual yoga pose or dance move that they've created, right? How does that work into your model? We want to make sure that we include students, families, and the community as much as we can. So again, pausing for a moment, checking in with your notes, checking in with questions. Does this resonate? What works? What wouldn't work for you? And thinking again about your comfort level. So Donna will chime in with any questions if there are any. And then I'm going to go through a closing tool or two. And so the first one is compliment circle. Again, it's in your packets. It's in my book. And I'm a big fan of, at the end of every class, or if you're doing a workshop, to make sure that you make time for a close. It's really easy, especially when we're working toward a performance piece, to zip our students through, and then we're like, all right, everyone, we'll close our class later. We'll do a formal close later. We don't have time for a formal close. It's really important to include something like a compliment game, where the students stand. You've got an inside circle, an outside circle. They make eye contact, and they give each other a sincere compliment. Now, I encourage you to read these steps and make sure you explain to your students what a compliment looks like. A compliment is not self-deprecating for the speaker. A compliment is not something that's comedic. A compliment is, I really like the dance pose that you created, right? The dance move that you created. And then the receiver of that saying thank you. And making sure that you take the time to paint a picture of what compliments, and getting students to witness each other in this collaboration is a huge part, because it's going to build that safety of the classroom, that safety of the workshop. And then again, one of my favorites, the 1-minute meditation, again, another strategy memory minute from my book. And it's really just a simple strategy. We probably all do something similar to this. And having the students visualize where that trajectory for their work. What do they want their hip-hop yoga or their dance and yoga class to look like? Like, what does that need to look like for them? And what was something that a takeaway from the day? And it gives them a chance in the fun, crazy awesomeness of a dance yoga class. It gives them a chance to collect, to center, to get back into their bodies before they have to put their coats on and go home. So again, thinking logistics here, thinking of all the strategies that we've covered today. You have your handout in front of you. You have your notes hopefully in front of you. Again, thinking about what you feel most comfortable leading and what most honors the needs of the students that you're serving. Think of the demographic, the population, the culture that you're working with, right? What would work? What would work for you? What would work for your students? What honors their diverse needs physically and emotionally? How can what you're doing, how can you create something that's inclusive? How can you be responsible in this creation, right? Again, it's not just about having fun. It's not just about getting the students to dance. That's not the end game. The end game has to be bigger than that, and our responsibility is to create a safe environment before we do anything else. So again, reflection time, time to take notes, a great time for questions. I know this is a ton of content in an hour, and I want to make sure that everyone has a chance, right, to kind of pause and reflect. So we're going to revisit our strategies, or revisit our agenda. Oh, was there something?
No, I just wanted to say that it's like you say, it's a lot to take in and then to apply it. And I love how the students take ownership of it, because I am not a hip hop dancer at any stretch of the imagination. My kids laugh at me when I try and dance. But this has made it very doable, even for a non-dancer such as myself. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you, Donna. That's really the end game. As I said, we can't all become hip hop dancers in, an hour webinar. And truth be told, my team will tell you I've got two left feet myself, right? But by empowering the kids, empowering our students, we're able to tap into their talents, which are plentiful. And so looking at our agenda here, reflecting on our practices as educators, learning new strategies, which we've done, and now we're going to set goals to implement 3 new strategies. And so what I'd encourage you to do is to set a goal. In the next 2 weeks, you will. What will you do in the next 2 weeks? Will you take that abbreviated lesson plan? Will you come up with your own? Will you teach the pass the clap circle? Will you teach compliment game, right? Now, I give you my email address, and I'd encourage you to email me your goals, or if you're working with a team, if you've got a thought partner who's on with you, if you want to email it to your partner, your hubby, then I would encourage you to take your goal and email it to someone. And then ask that person, in 2 weeks' time, can you reach back out to me and just make sure that I followed through with this goal? Like, how did I do with my goal? Where was I with my goal? Where am I with my goal, right? And this is, I do this a lot with my teams. I do it in every professional development workshop that I do as a way when you're learning new content, it can be overwhelming, and it's a great way just to bite off a chunk and say in the next 2 weeks. So again, I offer myself here as your thought partner. If you have someone else, please feel free, but emailing your goal to that thought partner and then requesting that in 2 weeks' time they check back in with you. So again, my book is a resource, but you have all the resources here in the handout. If you wanted more, you do get 25% off the book in the yoga cards, and here's all the information to do that. This is the webinar code, and then you'd email that code to my shipping manager. Her address is right here, or you can give her a call. Now again, no pressure to do that because you've got all the content in the handout and in the webinar, but if you need additional content, it's here for you. And so closing now, please feel free to chime in with any questions before we close, or my email address is here, my phone number is here. I have a fabulous team, so if I can't answer your question, someone from my team definitely can. We have an art therapist on staff. We have a licensed social worker on staff. And so if you have, there's needs that we didn't get a chance to talk about today, know that I'm here as a resource to support you in the work. It's really important to me that everyone who tries to implement some of the strategies that we've covered feels supported as they go to do so. So Donna, I'll turn it back over to you if there's any additional questions or any closing remarks.
Well, really appreciate that. Someone has typed in that they really, let me quote them, loved all the SEL stuff and definitely going to be using that.
Oh, great.
It was, like you say, it's more than just having fun. Right? That's one of the goals. We do want them to have a positive yoga and movement experience, but there is so much more, and we do have a responsibility to that more.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, please, everyone, feel free to reach out. It's been such an honor here to work with Donna on her amazing platform of resources, and an honor to work with you all today. Know that I am here to support you as you on your journey fusing yoga and dance together. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you. We really appreciate Carla with her expertise, with her step-by-step manner of presenting. She has been truly one of the top presenters that we've had here on Kids Yoga Academy, and I look forward to being able to work with her again in the future. If you've got any questions, feel free to reach out, and also come back and join us for our next webinar coming up in May. We'll learn how to connect the dots of our social presence, so how to use social media and your website and all those kind of interesting tools to build your business and your community. So that's will be coming up in May. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Like I said, I always go after the topics that are interesting to me, and so I always hope they're interesting to others. If the participants tonight have suggestions for upcoming webinars, feel free to email me or get in touch with me. And you will be receiving a follow-up email with a copy of the slides with your certificate of attendance. And so thank you so much for joining us this evening and give us the opportunity to spend some time with you.
Thank you so much. Everyone have a great night.
Namaste.
Namaste. Goodbye.